I'll never forget the moment when Deborah Wilkins, our HOA president, completely lost it over something as trivial as a car horn. One minute I was sitting in my car, and the next, the same woman who had made life in our neighborhood miserable was furiously banging on my hood. Her face was twisted in anger, yelling so loudly that neighbors started coming out to see what was going on. "How dare you honk at me? Do you even know who I am?" she screamed, her designer sunglasses flying off as she pointed aggressively at my windshield. "I run this neighborhood." I just sat there stunned behind the wheel, trying to figure out how a gentle, courteous honk could cause such an explosive reaction. Cars were lining up behind us and people began filming the chaos with their phones. Deborah kept ranting, totally unaware of the growing audience, until we all heard the faint sound of police sirens in the distance, something rare for our usually quiet suburb. I certainly hadn't planned to witness a full-blown meltdown from a grown woman in the middle of the street on a Tuesday afternoon. But then again, in Oakwood Estates, surprises are par for the course when Deborah's involved. It had all started about 20 minutes earlier. I was on my way home from work looking forward to unwinding after a long day. Our neighborhood is the picture of suburban perfection, neatly trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, and a strict HOA. No one enforced those rules more aggressively than Deborah, who had been president for the past 4 years. She took it upon herself to uphold what she called the community standards, which meant issuing citations for slightly overgrown grass, penalizing residents who didn't bring in their trash bins promptly, and holding monthly meetings where she lectured everyone about property values, always while sipping from her personalized water bottle. As I turned onto Maple Drive, I saw a white SUV just sitting in the middle of the road, not at a stop sign or anything, just idle with the driver's door slightly open. I waited patiently for about 15 seconds, then gave a quick, polite honk. It wasn't aggressive, just a subtle "excuse me." Suddenly, the door flew open and out stepped Deborah, dressed in her usual attire. Expensive capri pants, a pastel polo with the collar up, and her ever-present oversized sunglasses that somehow made her even more intimidating. She shot me a fierce look, rolled her eyes dramatically, got back in the car and shut the door without moving. I waited a little longer, then gave another, slightly longer honk. In response, she rolled down her window and made an obscene gesture in her mirror. She was clearly blocking the road on purpose. Frustrated but trying to stay calm, I realized there was just barely enough room to drive around her. So I carefully maneuvered past her SUV and continued home, thinking that would be the end of it. But as I glanced in my rearview mirror, I saw Deborah's SUV suddenly lurch forward. She whipped around in a sharp U-turn and started tailing me, so closely that it felt intentional. I gently sped up, hoping she'd back off, but instead she stayed glued to my bumper, laying on the horn non-stop. As I turned onto my street, she swerved into the opposite lane and pulled up beside me, shouting something unintelligible through her open window. Then, to my disbelief, she began hurling what appeared to be crumpled HOA newsletters at my car. Neighbors outside looked on, stunned, though some didn't even seem surprised. "You think you can disrespect me? I'm the HOA president. I will ruin your life," she screamed, her voice echoing down our usually quiet street. I refused to engage, eyes forward, keeping a steady pace toward my driveway. I assumed she'd just drive off in a final act of drama. Instead, she swung her SUV into my driveway right behind me, blocking me in. Before I could shut off the engine, she was out of her car, smartphone in hand, recording me. "This is the third time this resident has harassed me this month," she said to the camera, blatantly making things up. "He just tried to run me off the road and attacked me with his horn. I'm documenting everything for legal purposes and the next board meeting." I was speechless. "Deborah, all I did was honk because you were blocking the road. You followed me home," I said. That only seemed to fuel her rage. She stormed up to my front door, ignoring the fact that I was still standing outside, and started pounding on it. "You'll be fined to the fullest extent," she shouted. "These violations will go on your permanent HOA record. You'll never be allowed on a committee in this neighborhood." What she didn't notice was the audience growing around her. Mrs. Chen across the street was quietly filming everything. Tom and Sarah 2 doors down stood with crossed arms, clearly unimpressed. My next-door neighbor, Robert, a retired police officer, was calmly on the phone. "Yes, we need assistance at 427 Oakwood Lane," I overheard him say. "A woman followed someone home and is now making threats. She's been driving erratically and throwing objects from her vehicle. We have video evidence." Deborah, still consumed by her rant, hadn't realized she was being reported. She continued, recording herself, listing all the HOA violations she claimed I'd committed. from unauthorized window treatments to a bird feeder that supposedly exceeded size limits by half an inch. The board will hear about every bit of this, she declared. I'm calling an emergency meeting tomorrow night and pushing for the maximum fine. That's over $2,000 in case you're wondering. By then, a small crowd had gathered at a safe distance. Even the usually uninvolved neighbors were drawn, out by the sheer spectacle. The tension finally broke when the sound of police sirens grew closer. Deborah's expression shifted from self-righteous fury to confusion, then to indignation, as a cruiser pulled up in front of my house. 2 officers stepped out, calm but alert. She rushed over, phone still recording. Officers, thank goodness you're here. I'm Deborah Wilkins, president of the Oakwood Estates HOA. This man, she pointed at me dramatically, has been harassing and threatening me with his vehicle. I want to press charges immediately. One officer gave her a polite but measured look. Ma'am, we received several calls about a road rage incident involving someone following another vehicle home and creating a public disturbance. Do you have any information on that? Deborah's face turned red. That's not what happened. I was carrying out official HOA business when this man honked at me aggressively, putting my safety at risk. I followed him to document his violations. Mrs. Chen calmly stepped forward, holding up her phone. Actually, officers, I recorded the entire thing. It started when she blocked the road and made a rude gesture. I have it all here. Then she followed him home, Tom confirmed, his arms still crossed tightly over his chest. Sarah nodded, stepping slightly forward. We saw her throwing papers, looked like newsletters or flyers, out of her window at his car. It was completely unprovoked. The 2 officers exchanged a glance, their expressions tightening as they processed what they'd just heard. Then they turned back toward Deborah, whose self-assured stance had started to waver. The confident smirk she had maintained moments earlier was slowly being replaced by uncertainty. Ma'am, one of the officers said, his tone firm but calm, we're going to need to see some identification. And if you have any video evidence of your claims, we'd like to review it. Deborah blinked, clearly thrown off balance. Of course, she stammered, fishing in her oversized designer purse for her ID. I mean, yes, I have something. But her phone remained conspicuously locked and no footage was presented. Meanwhile, the officers were shown video after video from neighbors. Mrs. Chen had clear footage of the road incident. Robert, the retired officer, had a recording of the driveway confrontation, and others had clips of Deborah's erratic driving and shouting from the street. Each video added another layer of credibility to the unfolding case, and undermined her version of events even further. As the evidence mounted, Deborah's demeanor shifted rapidly. Her earlier aggression gave way to defensiveness, and when that failed to sway the officers, she abruptly tried a new tactic. Tears. This neighborhood is my responsibility, she wept, her voice cracking as she sat down heavily on the curb, mascara starting to smudge. I'm just trying to protect our property values, uphold the community standards. These people don't understand the pressure I'm under. I do everything for this neighborhood. Despite her dramatic shift in tone, the officers remained composed and professional. They continued speaking with witnesses, verifying details, and cross-referencing statements with the videos. Eventually, they approached Deborah, who was now staring daggers at a group of neighbors while furiously scrolling through her phone. Ms. Wilkins, one officer said, voice even but resolute. Based on the evidence we've reviewed and statements we've gathered, we're placing you under arrest for reckless driving, disorderly conduct, and making criminal threats. Please stand and place your hands behind your back. The silence that followed was thick with shock, especially from Deborah. You can't arrest me, she gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. Do you know who I am? I'm the president of this HOA. I have friends on the city council. But the officers didn't flinch. As they calmly handcuffed her, Deborah's voice rose to a shrill, almost hysterical pitch. This is all a huge misunderstanding. You're making a mistake. I'll have all your jobs. I'll sue this whole neighborhood. My husband plays golf with the mayor. Her protest continued even as she was led to the waiting police cruiser, shouting threats and declarations of innocence, now mostly directed at the small but captivated crowd. Her once pristine white SUV, still idling behind my car with the driver's door hanging open, had to be towed away as evidence. Neighbors stood in stunned silence as the police vehicle slowly pulled away. Deborah was still visible through the backseat window, clearly yelling, though her words were no longer audible. The only sound left was the fading wail of the sirens and the rustle of leaves in the otherwise quiet street. 3 weeks later, I received an official letter from the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. It confirmed everything. Deborah Wilkins had been charged with 3 misdemeanors and was facing up to 6 months in jail, along with fines totaling over $5,000. The HOA board had called an emergency session the very night of the incident and had voted unanimously to remove her from her position as president, effective immediately. The letter also noted, almost as an afterthought, that she had been terminated from her job at a well-known local real estate agency. Footage of her meltdown had gone viral across the community forums and inevitably beyond. The woman who once ruled our neighborhood with an iron clipboard had become an internet cautionary tale. But perhaps the most poetic moment came the following morning. As I drove past her house, I saw a freshly planted for sale sign standing tall on her flawless front lawn. The irony hit me instantly. It was a weekday, and she herself had written the HOA rule banning signage outside of weekends. Now she was violating her own regulation, likely in desperation. Through her large front window, I caught a glimpse of her. She was on the phone, gesturing wildly, her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. It was the face of someone who couldn't quite grasp how quickly everything had unraveled. The queen of the cul-de-sac had finally been dethroned.